Hi everyone, in our engine and chassis component lab, today our experiment is automotive clutch system and its classification. So first understand the clutch system. Here is the picture of the clutch device. Now what is clutch? The clutch is a device using the transmission systems of a motor vehicle to engage and disengage the engine to the transmission. That means the clutch is a mechanical device that engage and disengage the power transmission, especially from driving shaft to driven shaft. So here is the picture of the top view of the vehicles. So it is the engine and this is the transmission systems. So during the transmission system and engine, in between them the clutch devices are located. So the clutch systems are used to disengage the engine from the road. When the pedal is depressed, the clutch is disengaged from the engine. So it's very simple. Clutch systems. With our foot off of the pedal, the clutch is engaged to the engine. The pressure plate holds the clutch against the flywheel, allowing the power to travel through the clutch to the input shaft of the transmission. The engine power will transfer through the clutch to the road. Principal operation. The clutch works on the principle of friction. When two friction surfaces are brought in contact with each other and press, they are united due to the friction between them. The friction between the three surfaces depend upon the area of surface, applied pressure and coefficient of friction. So those three parameters are required. The two surfaces can be separate and brought into contact when required. One surface is considered as a driving member and other is a driven member. The driving member is kept rotating. Function of clutch. When the clutch is engaged, the power flow from the engine to the wheel through the transmission systems and the vehicle moves. When the clutch is disengaged, the power is not transmitted to the wheel and the vehicle stops while engine is still running. The clutch is kept engaged when the vehicle is moving. The clutch also permits the gradual taking up of load. When properly operated, it prevents jerky motion of the vehicle. The clutch is disengaged when starting the engine, when shifting the gear, when stopping the vehicle and when idling the engine. And when the clutch is released, that means the clutch is engaged. Requirement of clutch. There are some requirement of clutch like torque transmission. It must transmit, drive smoothly with no slip and drag. That means drag means it is not fully disengaged and rub together, still transmitting some device, that is called drag. And what is slip? The slip means the drive is not fully transmitted and friction surface slide over each other, producing less turning effort. So this is called slip. Second, gradual engagement. Third, heat dissipation. Third, dynamic balancing. vibration damping, size is more important to us, that when you increase the size, so what happen, the torque is increased. So as per the design, you have to select the proper size of clutch. Free paddle play, it is one of the important. If the paddle play does not free, that means some gaps are not here, so what happened, the clutch is slippage, clutch is slipping. Why? Because the clutch is disengaged, some portion are disengaged. Easy in operation, and last of all, lightness, it should be lighter. What happens when the clutch is engaged? First, the component being separated, with no drive being transmitted. That means when the pedal is pressed, that means when the driver pulls the pedal, clutch pedal, the component being separate. So as the driver release the pedal, the component being to touch. So then the move component attach the engine crankshaft, the contact the stationary component attached to the input of gearbox. Friction start to create drag and being to turn a stationary component. Initially this is at different speed. This is called slip. Eventually, as more pressure is applied, from the spring, all the parts are held securely together. The drives is then transmitted, hopefully with no slippage. Now here's the picture how an automotive clutch work. This is the manual transmission, this is the clutch plate, and this is pressure plate. This one is the engine and this one is the flywheel. So the clutch plate are located in between pressure plate and flywheel. So the component is here, so it shows separately, and the shaft, that is the transmission shaft, which undergoes to the transmission box or manual transmission, not gearbox. This is the start, this is diaphragm spring, and this is throwout bearing, that is the release bearing. There is clutch housing, and there is a release fork, and this is also the bell housing. Now type of clutch. Clutch basically two types. One is positive clutch, second is friction clutch. Now the friction clutch are three types, that is disc clutch, cone clutch, and centrifugal clutch. Now the plate or disc clutch are two types. One is single plate clutch and second is multi-plate clutch. The system component: flywheel, transfer engine power to the clutch. Input shaft, transfer power from clutch to transmission. Clutch disc, spline to input shaft and transfer power from the engine to the input shaft. Pressure plate assembly, spring pressure tightly hold the clutch to the flywheel. Another components are release bearing, that is throwout bearing. Its another name is throwout bearing, connecting through linkage or hydraulic linkage to the clutch pedal provided a way for pressure plate to release pressure on the clutch. Pilot bearing or bushing mounted in the tail of crankshaft, stabilizer of input shaft, not always used for front wheel drives. Clutch fork. Slide the release bearing into and away from the pressure plate assembly. Now the part of the clutch. Here is the part of the clutch. This is the power transmission system, that is power come from engine and go to transmission. So the arrow is here. So first of all, the first component is flywheel, and this one is the clutch disc. Third is the pressure plate assembly. That means there is the pressure plate, that is clutch cover, and pressure plates are there. This is clutch linkage, and this is clutch fork, and this one is the release bearing or throughout bearing. Clutch fork ball stud, and this is the clutch housing, that is bell housing. Clutch linkage allow the drive to operate the clutch fork. Clutch housing or bell housing, this is another name is bell housing, enclose the clutch assembly, may be integral with the transmission or removable. Clutch component flywheels mounted on the rear of the crankshaft. It is mounted on the rear of the crankshaft. Act as a balancer of engine, add inertia to the rotating crankshaft, provide a surface for the clutch to contact. Here is the surface where the clutch surfacings are contact here. So this is the frictioning area, usually surrounded by ring gear for the electric starter operation. Flywheel construction, usually constructed of nodular cast iron which has a high graphite content. That means made by the high graphite content. The graphite helps a lubricant engagement of the clutch. So why is used? Because why the graphite is used? Because you know the carbon percentage are more than the other materials. So carbon is a good lubricant, so that's why the high graphites are here. May also be constructed from cold roll steel. Dual mass flywheel, the flywheel hub and clutch matting area are two separate components. Springs are used to depend engine and clutch engagement oscillation. Dual mass flywheel, here is the oscillation graphs, that is the dual mass flywheel. So if you were the dual mass flywheel, some oscillation graph are there. There is the oscillation sent to the transmission and oscillation produced by the engine. So the oscillation, that means vibrations, are created and oscillation sent to the transmission. So there is the dual mass flywheel is some vehicles are used. Flywheel measurement. Some measurements are necessary to the flywheel. So first, run out. Second, parallelism, and third is thickness. Run out is measure with a dial indicator. So if it is the indicating device or the measuring device, we can measure the overall run out, what the run out system, what are the dia are there. Parallelism, straight edge and feeler gauge. So it is also the requirement. And thickness, that is the micrometer or dial indicator, whereas the thickness of the flywheel. Now flywheel runout, so that is the runout. Then the flywheel parallelism, there is the surface. It is, if you see, there is the system. If you see the surface is flat or oval. Flywheel thickness is also required for thickness. Now clutch component. Now the clutch component, that is, first is the input shaft. So there is the input shaft, and this is from transmission bearing, and this is the pilot boost spot here. Today we discuss about the clutch system from the solid clutch. This is the 1.8 liter diesel engine, and this is the oldest ambassador engine. And this one is the clutch unit, which is attached to the flywheel. So this is the IDI engine, and here this one is the clutch, this one is the flywheel, and the clutch unit, this is the clutch unit, which is already attached to the flywheel by the bolt. So before starting the clutch system, first of all you know what is clutch and how it's work. So clutch is the device used in the transmission system of a motor to engage and disengage the engine to transmission. That means clutch is a mechanical device that engages and disengages the power transmission, especially from driving shaft to driven shaft. So if you see imaginary, this is the flywheel, so this is the driving shaft and this is the driven shaft. So this is the flying part. Power will, first of all, the total power, the power is produced in the combustion chamber and it is transformed to the crankshaft, and ultimately this goes to the flywheel, and flywheel is then the power is transferred to the transmission system. But during the transmission system and during the gearbox and flywheel, there are some components of there, clutch unit. These units are engage and disengage in process for the power cutoff system. Now the function of clutch. Now when the clutch is engaged, the power flow from the engine to the wheel through the transmission system, and the vehicle moves. When the clutch is disengaged, the power is not transmitted to the wheel and vehicle stop while the engine is still running. The clutch also permits the gradual taking up the load, and when the properly operation and prevent the jerk motion of the vehicle also. So the clutch is disengaged. When clutch is disengaged, that means the clutch pedal is pressed. When the clutch pedal is pressed, that means the clutch is disengaged. So what happened during the starting time of the engine? It should be disengaged. that means the pedal, you must be press the pedal, and when you shifting the gear, that means during transmission time, when you vary the speed, then that time the pedal also press, and when stopping the vehicle, also, that means neutral position, but also you can disengage, it should be disengaged. And when idling the engine, suppose the car is running for ideal position, that time you change your transmission in neutral position. So before changing the neutral position, you should disengage the transmission power system. So clutch is also are required to disengage the power system. Okay. Now the principle of operation. The clutch work on principle of friction. So what are the principles? When the two friction surface, that means the clutch surface and also the clutch plate surface, both are engaged. So that means they are rubbing surface to surface, that is friction. So when two friction surfaces are brought in contact with each other and press the pressure unit into the friction between them. The friction between the three surfaces depend upon the friction surface depend upon the area of the surface, applied force, and coefficient of the material, that means surface material, but already used. So, and when the clutch is engaged, that means when the clutch is engaged, and this is the one type of this clutch pedal is pressed, and when clutch is engaged, that means the clutch pedal is disengaged. So this is the function. Now, what are the requirement of clutch? That means what are the requirement of the clutch, or what are the material requirement of the clutch unit property? So first of all, that is torque transmit. Torque transmit means it must transmit device smoothly with no slip and drag. No slip and drag. That means drag means, what is the drag? Drag means it is not fully disengaged and rubbed together. Still transmit some drive. That means this is called drag. And what is called slip? Slip means the drive is not fully transmitted. When suppose the clutch is engaged, but the power transmission is not fully transmitted. So the friction surface, those friction surface over each other are sliding, so and produce less turning effort. So this is the most vital thing you have to know. And one thing is heat dissipate property. So some materials which have been used, it should be proper heat dissipate. That heat dissipate timing it should be more faster. Dynamic balance, vibration damping during the engage, it should be proper damping process. Size also the requirement to transmit the torque also. Free pedal play and easy operation some and lightness. So if you see the oldest engine, the clutch units are heavy. If you see the modern engine and if you see the clutch unit in this engine, it's lighter than this unit. So what are the main part of the clutch? Basically, the main part of the clutch, is driving member and driving member and operation member. Driving member is, this one is the driving member. So this one is the driving member. The driving member is flywheel and driven member is clutch plate. So, and how many type of clutch we have been used? Most of the time, two type of clutch systems are used. One is friction clutch. Actually, the friction clutch is most of the automotive section are used. Some other clutch systems are also used. That is centrifugal clutch or hydraulic clutch or vacuum clutch. That's all. That is different. Cone clutch also. But now we are talking about the friction clutch. So the friction clutch basically two types. One is finger type clutch and one is that is single plate clutch, and second is the multi plate clutch. Now single plate clutch, this is the single plate clutch, and single plate clutch, this is the finger type single plate clutch or coil type single plate clutch. Now if you see the construction of single plate clutch, this is the clutch cover, or we can also tell bell housing, and this one is the release bearing or throughout bearing, and there is the fork also, which is not here, and one component is fork and the linkage also there, but I will show that later in another model where is fork and the linkage also. Now if you see, there is the throughout bearing or release bearing, and this one is the clutch cover. Inside the clutch cover, if I open it, then you will see inside the clutch cover some coils are there and pressure plate also are there, and the pressure plate and the flywheel in between a clutch disc also there. So I will open it. The bolt. Now, so the whole unit, the clutch unit, we are already open. Now we are, so this one is the clutch disc or friction disc. So basically this is the clutch disc, and this one is the pressure plate, and this is the bell housing or clutch cover. If you see minutely, those are the coils. This is the coil. So it is called coil type pressure plate or finger type clutch plate. So these are it is the coil, and this is the eye bolt. This one is the eye bolt. This is the release lever. You can call release lever, and this is the tension. This one is the tension spring. This is the tension type spring, locking spring. And if you see, and now what this is the this one is the, and this is the pressure plate. So pressure plate, what is the function? It allows the clutch disc, it apply the pressure to the clutch disc by squeezing the clutch disc between itself and the flywheel. So here you also see this is the flywheel. So this is the frictional area, and the clutch plate. This is the clutch plate or friction plate are placed here, and these are the spline hub, and the shaft, which is the driving shaft are there. When it rotates, it transmit the power here, and those power are transmit by the driving shaft. So here is some splines are there, which is transmit the power to the driving shaft. So now this is the clutch plate or friction disc. You may call also friction disc. So this area is a frictional area. This is called liner. Okay. So the liner are placed in both sides. If you see minutely, this side and this side also. So the liner are placed both sides. So basically the liner in older car, the liner are made by asbestos. Now in modern clutch system, some frictional materials are made by ceramic materials. Most of the and some organic resin with copper wire. So some high-speed car, you may see that the ceramic material are the frictional area are made by ceramic material, and coefficient of friction of the friction disc surface in about 0.35 for original and 0.25 for ceramic. That means the coefficient of friction, if you the material which is used for resin or with copper, his coefficient is 0.35, and if you see the ceramic, the coefficient of friction is 0.25. Now and also ceramic can take the large carry the large load or it carried the large loads also. So some racing car you might be seeing the ceramic material are placed. Now this is the clutch hub. This is the clutch hub, and this one is the spline. This is the torsion spring. Torsion spring are placed here. That means the clutch, the torsion spring are here. And what is the function of torsion spring? The function of torsion spring, that is, it absorbs the torsional force or torsional or damping power to impulse of crankshaft. So it is a spring type material. This is a coil spring type, and if you see if you see the inside, the one metal path are placed inside both of the lining. So this plate is also called cushion spring. So it is web metal between clutch halves. It is, and what is the function? It is a damping material. That means it absorbs during the engaging, it dampens the shock. So that is the cushion spring, and this one is the coil spring or torsion spring. And if you see the both liner are attached by riveting process. So this is the whole process of clutch friction base, and this is the pressure plate. You also